Hi, my name is Roy Harmon. I'm very happy to welcome you all tonight to the Bank of Tennessee. I'm the CEO of the bank, although I'm not very much in charge most of the time, it seems like, anymore. But welcome to our boardroom. As you can see, this is a wonderful room. We love sharing this with everybody, and it's a great place to have a meeting. It's a great place to gather and in this case, to network and to learn and hear from successful people, and I know you're going to have a very inspirational program this evening. You know, I don't know how I'm the only male in the room besides the cameraman back here. He's behind the camera, but I do like it a lot. Yeah, Farouz will tell you that I like being around women. So, I guess I came along in my professional career. I graduated from University of Tennessee with an accounting degree. I know there's a couple of accountants in here, in 1976. And when I started, I went to work for Arthur Anderson, which then was a big public accounting firm, and it was really something of pride to say that you worked there. Today, the firm no longer exists because of Enron and a few other things. So, but I'm still proud of the time that I spent there. But when I went to work, it was mostly men, but it was just the time that women were starting to come into the professional ranks. And of my class of 22 people, there were 11 females and 12 males, I guess, or 11 males. Yeah, 11 and 11, 22. Accountant, banker. I can't do it without a spreadsheet. It's bad, isn't it? Oh, it's really bad. But as we progressed through that, it was a very unique time because, you know, the accounting profession was all men at that point in time, and so when you traveled, you didn't think anything about it. But I can remember the first time I had to go out of town, and I had to take a very lovely young lady who was also very smart and accomplished, named Nancy, with me from Chattanooga. I was living in Chattanooga to Nashville. Well, my friends gave me unmitigated hell for having to go out of town with a female. And my wife wasn't too happy about it either. So things have really changed. And but as I say, I've been a product of the advancement of professional females. And looking around this room, there are a lot of accomplished people here. And I know you'd like to be recognized as a female, but I'd prefer to recognize you for the accomplishments that you've made, not for the fact that you are a female versus a male. So I think you can take great pride in the strides that you've made. There's no doubt that females are smarter than males. I mean, that's especially true in my house. So, I mean, I'll give you that, you know. And it's really hard to be around a bunch of smart women because they don't let you forget how dumb you are. So, I know. Hi, Liza. She knows she's smarter. There's no doubt that Liza's smarter than I am. And my two daughters, one's a PhD analytical chemist, and one is a OBGYN. So they're definitely smarter than I am. And then when you go to visit them in school, I mean, these young females, and young people in general, the young males are smart too, but they're phenomenally smart. I mean, it really gives me great hope for the future about and seeing the academic and intellectual capabilities of these kids. I mean, it's unbelievable. And the things that they're doing are way beyond anything we ever dreamed of. So, again, I'm getting a little far afield here, but welcome to Bank of Tennessee. We're very happy to host you. We're very proud of your accomplishments. And I think Jan is going to introduce Dr. Bishop, who's going to be your keynote speaker for this evening. And we want this to be a continuing series. And I hate that the guys can't come. We're going to have to come up with something other than golf, you know. You're really showing us up now. So, but anyway, without further ado, I will turn it over to Jan, who will introduce your speaker, and I will graciously slide out. So thank you very much for coming.
Thanks, Roy. Do you want your wine? Yes. Since you are leaving here. You're welcome to stay, even though I didn't know you were going to take my first 10 minutes that I was going to have to talk, but you're welcome to stay. Wow, I'm so impressed. I mean, this is our kickoff, and just the turnout, the people, of course, some are friends that were obligated. They didn't have a choice, they had to come. A lot of others are people that I have met with over the last year talking about the Women Empowered, and that's what we're here today. This is to our initial kickoff for Women Empowered Bank of Tennessee program, and so I'm so excited, and thank you so much for coming. You know, a year ago, and it was Roy that I have to give him credit. He came to me and he said, I think you need to look at doing a program designed for women. And I'm like, you want me to do what? Okay, I've been in banking 30 some years, a long time. Yeah, I tell people I was born in the vault. And I'm kind of like, really? And so we spent the first year just doing research on women, and the statistics that I started finding, I'm like, I had no idea. Women make 85% of all of the consumer purchasing decisions. I thought, well, really? 90% of all home purchases are made by women. Globally, women control more than $20 trillion in consumer spending. 1/3 of all the businesses are owned by women. Yeah. And the female economy represents both the largest and the fastest growing segment. I know I see Andrea here in the audience, and Andrea is with the Chamber, Cosby, and Kingsport, and she was one of the first people I went to, knowing that she works with business owners, works with a lot of women business owners, to really pick her brain about these statistics and how she felt about a program. And she was so encouraging. Yes, I definitely think this is something that you could succeed with. And it's not like we are the only person that have done this, because there are large companies, large banks that have it, but they don't have it on a local level. And being a community bank, we can do this on a local level. We've actually developed a website, and in talking to women and business leaders out there in the community, we kept hearing two things. Women really want valuable information that they can take to help them more successful in their business. Or they want networking opportunities just like this to help them network in the community. So we kept hearing those two things, and that's how we really created Women Empowered. And with Women Empowered, I really think that it's a program that was designed by you, for you, and we can make it whatever we want to make it. And I'm really excited to try and put together more programs down the road. We already have 4 programs. I think the next month's program invitation was out on the front desk, so hopefully you can sign up for that. But we'll be hosting more of those, and if you go to our website on bankoftennessee.com/business/Women Empowered, something like that, we actually are going to be spotlighting women business owners and professionals in the community. Our first business spotlight is Miss Joanne Patey, so we're really excited to have her on there. So go to the website, you can read more about Joanne's profile, and we want to do that with business owners in the community and spotlight how they became successful and what they did so that they can share their success with other women business owners. Before I turn it over and recognize our speaker, which is really what you're here for, I know, I would like to recognize my advisory board for Women Empowered. Most of them, I think, only have one that's not here tonight. But if y'all don't mind to stand so everybody knows who you are. I know nobody likes to do that, but Donna Nolan with ETSU First Lady. Joanne Patey, ETSU Associate Athletic Director for Advancement. Mary Ellen Miller, Owner Marketing Mel. Chandra Shell, Director of Public Relations and Marketing, Milligan College. Jenny Dixon, Tri-City Skin and Cancer. Judy and Judy could not come, but Judy Derby, owner of News and Neighbor and Business Journal. And then my Bank of Tennessee associates, Helen Whitson. Lynn James. And Deanna Stanley. It's in the back already standing. Thank you all so much for your time and support that you've put into this program as well. Now, speaking of successful women in the community and being inspired, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker. Dr. Wilsie Bishop is Vice President for Health Affairs and the Chief Operating Officer at East Tennessee State University. Prior to assuming that role in 2007, she served in various administrative positions at the university. A tenured professor, Dr. Bishop has taught in the bachelorette and graduate nursing programs at ETSU, in the ETSU Master of Public Management program, and in the doctoral program in public health. Dr. Bishop has administrative responsibility for the colleges of clinical and rehabilitative health sciences, medicine, nursing, pharmacy, and public health. She received her undergraduate and graduate degrees in nursing at the Medical College of Virginia and a Master of Science in Education, as well as a master's and doctorate in public administration from the University of Southern California. Wilsie's honors and public recognitions reflect her commitment to helping women be successful in their chosen life paths. She is the recipient of the Altrusa Honorarium for Women in Industry Award in 1990, the Paul Harris Fellow, Rotary International 1992, Notable Women of ETSU 2003, Bristol Regional YWCA Tribute to Women Award 2008, Barbara Murphy Brooks Honoree Women Making History Lecture 2008, and was a National Honor Initiate to Sigma Kappa Sorority 2008. In 2013, she was named one of 120 visionary leaders in celebration of Virginia Commonwealth University School of Nursing's 120th anniversary. She was also inducted into the Tennessee Women's Hall of Fame in October 2013, joining a group of distinguished women who have made outstanding, unique, and lasting contributions to the economic, culture, and political well-being of Tennessee. Dr. Bishop's going to be speaking on confidence, what we can learn from 20-year-olds. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Bishop.
You know, that's one of those introductions you wished your parents could hear. Well, this is really a very special honor for me to be here tonight with you. I know how important it is to think about what we as women do and to come together and network. I'm awed by the power that's in this room. You all are accomplished women, and I wondered for a while if there was anything I'm going to be able to tell you that you don't already know. But what I think I might be able to do is give you some thoughts and help you organize some of the things you already know. And I hope by the end of the evening that we'll come to some words of advice that will be useful wherever you are in your career. So to tell you what I'm going to do this evening, First of all, I have to do what's comfortable for me, and that is to give you a little bit of theory. So I'm going to talk about confidence from a theoretical perspective, just a little bit. And then I'm going to do what's a little less comfortable for me, and that's to talk about me. Now, I can talk about me a lot. What's uncomfortable is trying to get it down to the period of time that I need to so that you guys get to go home tonight. And then right at the end, we'll kind of wrap it up with some advice so you'll know where I'm going and that there really is a plan in this process for speaking. This is a beautiful location, and what better place to talk about empowering women than in the bank boardroom. Great thought to have it here as we kick it off. In fact, I was telling Deanna earlier that I've done accreditation visits for a lot of years, and one of the ones that stands out in my mind the most was at Texas Women's University. The president's conference room was on the 7th floor, and there were windows just like this that looked out across the Texas landscape. And Dr. Shirley Chatter, who became quite a significant president at TWU, leaned back at the end of her long conference table and in her best Texas accent said, "I love my job." And of course, that's what we all want to do. We all want to have boardrooms with a vista like this, but if we can all love our jobs, then that empowers us to do a good job. So my first question is, how many of you in the room tonight are in your 20s? There are few. They're good. Okay. Well, that's my next question. How many of you can remember being in your 20s? All right. All right. Well, you know, being 20 today is a lot different than being 20 when I was 20. Today's 20-year-old has, as Roy has already alluded to, has opportunities that we didn't have. The role of women has changed dramatically in the last 40 to 50 years. So today's 20-year-old doesn't have to hear, "Don't be silly," when they say, "I want to be a dentist or an astronaut or a nuclear physicist." Today's 20-year-old can apply to any public institution and most private institutions, to graduate school or to undergraduate school, and know that her application is going to be reviewed the same as anyone else's. Today's college graduate can apply and enroll in graduate schools or can assume positions in industry, in banking, in education, healthcare, and know that a family and a career are not mutually exclusive. Many of you in this room probably had to make a decision at one time of whether you were going to seek a career or whether you were going to have a family. Now, doing it all may be difficult, and it may be stressful, and it may be dependent upon a strong support system, but we know that it is possible. Today's 20-year-old's culture is one that holds expectations for success. A recent nationwide poll by Clark University of more than 1,000 young adults in their 20s found that they were stressed but optimistic. 89% noted that they were confident that eventually they would get what they wanted from life. The 20-year-old has a permission to take risks that you don't have as you get older. They enjoy the freedom of choice, and they often are not hesitant to try on careers or different roles for just the right fit. 20-year-olds are defining their strengths and they're developing skill sets to prepare them for their future. So what does this have to do with confidence? Well, there's a strong connection between knowing one's strengths and working to improve them. Confident individuals are able to invest in themselves, and they're able to invest in other people. And confident individuals are risk takers. They're not afraid of failure, and they know that they cannot make progress without taking some risk. Now, confidence can manifest itself in many ways. In your body language, in your demeanor, in your personal surroundings. And how often have you heard you only have one chance to make a first good impression? So how I walk to the podium, or whether I make eye contact, or how I shake your hand, tells you how important I believe a meeting is, or my presence in that meeting, or your presence in that meeting. So you exude confidence, and in doing that, you can make others feel confident too. The other thing that works well for leaders who are confident is that they tend to have a little bit of a halo effect. Because if you're seen as a high performer, people put more trust in you. If they believe that you have potential for being a high performer, they may give you more tips. They'll tend to invest time in you. They'll make sure you know what article to read, or what webinars that you should be watching. They'll mentor you and guide you. So, in fact, the person who is seen as confident and high performer often has some negatives downplayed, because people assume that they're going to be positive and win out and be confident in the end. But without the willingness to take risk and to explore alternatives, many of us put aside personal and professional opportunities. We might be waiting for the right time to step out, the right time to say yes, the right time to get out of the comfort zone and try something new. An example can be found in the words of the former mayor of Atlanta, Shirley Franklin. She did not seek public office until she was in her 50s. And she writes about this in a book. And she says that in her 40s, she was already the highest ranking woman in Atlanta government. But she was afraid to step forward and run for election. She said, "My fears of failure, my fears of not being perfect," how many of you ever worried about not being perfect, "have kept me from thinking that I couldn't run for mayor. I was the top appointed woman in the city government in my 40s. I stepped out, but I didn't have the nerve to run. But in my 50s, I was willing to be the woman out front, and that's when I ran for mayor." And she goes on to say, "I think people mature at different stages of their lives. The key is to find your own comfort level with risk-taking and with leadership. Some people get it earlier than others." Harvard professor Rosabeth Moss Kanter suggests that confidence is a sweet spot between arrogance and despair. The sweet spot between arrogance and despair. Arrogance involves the failure to see any flaws or any weaknesses, and despair is the failure to see any strengths. So how do we get to the sweet spot? Well, certainly I believe we need to be competent. We need to have the knowledge, the skills, the experiences to do our jobs. We need to do our jobs well. We need to be consistent in our actions. People need to know that the person that they see in you today is the person they're going to see in you tomorrow. They need to know you're going to be loyal, you're going to be responsible, but you're going to be consistent. That doesn't mean you have to be boring, and it doesn't mean you always have to give the same answer. But there's got to be a consistency of your approach to your work so that you can be counted on. You need to be compassionate. You really need to care about what you do. You won't be happy if you don't care about what you do. And it translates into your work if you're just going through the motions. So you need to be compassionate about your approach. And I would argue, perhaps most importantly, you need to be confident in your abilities to grab the brass ring of opportunity when it comes around. The merry-go-round, when you jump on, when the brass ring comes around, you grab it. So part of that is knowing what you want to do, preparing yourself to do that, and when the opportunity comes along, saying yes. And sometimes the opportunity doesn't exactly look like what you think it's going to look like, but it may be the door that gets you into a situation that can move you to your ultimate goal. So I believe that if we as women can dream our dreams, then we owe it to ourselves to plan the course to achieving those dreams. And this, of course, requires self-discipline, self-direction, and focus. because you have to do all of those to gain the skills necessary to be successful. Confident individuals know what they believe. They hold strong their values, and they're able to translate these values and habits into discipline that will lead to their success. Okay, let's talk about some 20-year-olds. Let me provide an illustration from my favorite group of 20-year-olds. And this is the University of North Carolina women's soccer team. Their team value statement encompasses components essential to achieving success, regardless of whether it's on the athletic field or whether it's in the bank boardroom. This group of 20-year-olds who over time have epitomized how having confidence and a positive set of values can lead to success. The soccer program is one of the most successful sports teams in collegiate history. It's the winning championships at every level is at the core of the fabric of the Carolina women's soccer team. In its first 34 years, Carolina has won 22 of 32 national championships. 22 of 32 national championships. The Tar Heels have staked a claim as one of the greatest dynasties in intercollegiate athletics history. And it's hard to imagine any team, men or women's, being any more successful than women's soccer has been at Carolina. So what leads to this success? Well, I'm sure that there's a lot of factors, including good coaching, the ability to recruit top athletes, a well-funded athletic program. But however, in my mind, I think the most important part is attitude, and it's attitude that's passed down from team to team. Over a period of years, this team of young women have developed and they have refined their value statement, and they've internalized these core values that drive their actions and create a culture of confidence for their success. So I'm going to read it to you and realize this is in the words of 20-year-olds. I may read it twice. If you don't get it the first time, I'll read it again. They say, we don't whine. We work hard. The truly extraordinary do something every day. We choose to be positive. When we don't play as much as we would like, we are noble and we support the team and its mission. We don't freak out over ridiculous issues or live in fragile stages of emotional catharsis or create crises where none should exist. We are well led. We care about each other as teammates and as human beings. We play for each other. And we want our lives, and not just in soccer, to be never-ending ascensions. Isn't that noble? We want our lives to be never-ending ascensions. We don't whine. We work hard. We play for the team. When we don't play as much as we want, we still support each other. What a wonderful ethos for life. So while this credo was written long after I was a 20-year-old, I do think that it reflects a lot of my values and my drive and what has helped to get me to where I am today. So now we switch from theory to me. If it's too much me, let me know. I currently teach a graduate course in our doctoral program in public health. It's in leadership, policy, and ethics, and I teach it with Dr. Randy Wyckoff, who's the dean of the College of Public Health. And it's fun. It keeps me in touch with students. I love it when they walk across stage and they graduate, and I can say they're my students who are graduating. I really feel that I'm involved, and I know them. But one of the things I do when I'm teaching these students about leadership is I tell them that the kind of leader that they are will very much depend upon their life's journey, what has brought them to where they are at this point in their life. And I have them on the first day of class map their life's journey. They have to draw it. They can't talk about it until they map it out. I give them flip chart paper, sometimes 2 sheets. Sometimes they ask for 3. Those are the older students. And I give them markers, and they go off in a corner, and they mark events, major cultural events, perhaps social events. I ask them to identify people who've been important, who've been mentors in their lives. And then after they spend about 30, 45 minutes doing that, we put the papers up around the room, and they tell their life's journey. I've heard remarkable stories that these students probably would not have told their colleague students without this impetus from the class doing it. If I started telling you their stories, we might be here all night. But I am determined to know what makes these students special. How did they get from where they were to where they are now? And then this is the first stage in having them do what we call their leadership development plan. And that's a 3-part plan where they have to talk about what their goals are. They have to identify what they need to do to achieve those goals. And then they have to establish a plan for achieving them. So they understand what they're bringing to their role by doing their life's journey. So I'm going to give you a little bit of my life's journey. It's not going to be mapped out on paper. I can't draw any better than the students do. And it will be somewhat abbreviated, thank goodness. So let me tell you about me. I grew up on a farm in rural Virginia. My parents had lived through 2 world wars and the Depression. They were people who worked hard but didn't have a high school education. They wanted me to have education. My grandmother lived with us, and I still remember that she would say, I'll do the dishes, you go study. Sounded like a pretty good deal to me. My husband thought when he came home and met my family and had all these wonderful meals that here I had a grandmother who cooked well and a mother who cooked well. He really thought he was in for it. He didn't know I'd been studying all these years they'd been cooking. So now he cooks and packs my lunch every day when I go to work. But I knew hard work, and I understood people who worked hard, and I understood the importance of having values and being centered in their life. I knew that I wanted to get out of Appomattox, Virginia. I knew that, and I knew that my family wanted to support me in doing that. They wanted me to have a good education. I talked to my high school counselor, and I said, I'm really interested in science. And he said, great, you should be a nurse. That was kind of the reaction at that time. I remember telling my dad I wanted to be a veterinarian. And he said, and I remember it really well because we were driving back from an opportunity where we'd been talking to some folks to come and kill our hogs. It was hog killing season. And we were in the truck and it was cold. And I said, I think I'd like to be a veterinarian. And he said, I don't think you do. And I said, well, what do you mean? Of course, he wasn't aware that sometimes veterinarians take care of foo-foo little dogs and things like that. He said, I don't think you want to get up in the middle of the night and help cows deliver calves, do you? Well, that was a turning point. I think he was probably right. But my high school guidance counselor said, well, you're kind of smart. I was a class valedictorian. He said, so you ought to go and get a bachelor's degree in nursing. And that made all the difference. This was a person in my life. If I was drawing my life's journey, I'd draw my high school guidance counselor who said, you ought to get a college degree. In my high school class, out of 80, 20 people went to nursing school. 2 of us got our baccalaureate, and the other 18 got their diploma degrees. Nothing wrong with that. They're good nurses, but their careers did not take off like the 2 of us who got our bachelor's degrees. So I had good advice early on, and that was important. I worked hard. I knew that I needed to get skills. And so while I was in high school, I worked as a nurse's aide at Lynchburg General Hospital. I made 75 cents an hour. 75 cents an hour. I worked time and a half so I could make $1.25 an hour. And I felt really rich at that point. One summer I stayed with my sister and my brother-in-law because I couldn't drive back and forth to Lynchburg to work these long shifts. And it was hard. I had bedpans and gave baths and changed sheets. And this was when you gave back rubs still at night. And I gave back rubs to 54 patients all the way down. You know, don't you, Joanne? And I remember calling home, and it was a long-distance call, and I couldn't talk very long. And I said, this has been really nice. I have gotten a lot of experience, and I think I'll enjoy being a nurse. And I don't think I'll come back to work next week. And my dad said, oh, yes, you will. You don't quit. You start something and you finish it. Another mark on my MAPS journey, life's journey. I knew you don't quit. Sometimes things are hard, but you don't quit. I've always sought additional experiences. I've always wanted to be on the cutting edge. So while I was in nursing school, I worked in the burn unit. I worked in the ER. My first day in the ER was July the 4th in Richmond on the trauma ER. You can imagine it didn't get any less busy from that point on. When I graduated, I worked in cardiac surgery intensive care. I worked with the world's longest living heart transplant patient. It was exciting. We were doing things nobody else had been doing. In fact, we had just started doing CABG procedures, which are coronary bypasses, which are so every day now, but these were just being done at that time. I loved that what I was doing was cutting edge. I loved that I was learning something every day. And then I met my husband and took the greatest risk of all. We met in October. Well, we actually met in September. My dad died. He took notes in the class while I was away from my dad's funeral. And when I came back, he said, would you like to go out? Well, I'd been working long hours. And 1776 was in town, and I wanted to go see 1776. I didn't want to date this guy. And he said, I have tickets to 1776. And I said, oh, okay. Well, that was, our first date was in November. He asked me to marry him the end of January, a Super Bowl game. And we got married in June. I hadn't met his family. He could have been an axe murderer for all I know. Well, we'll celebrate our 43rd anniversary this year. Because as I told him, I said, you know, I'm not sure that I'm ready to get married. There are lots of things I want to do. And he says, marry me and you'll get to do them. And he has been a great support all these years, encouraging me in my education. He says he had a child in school till, and let's see, how does he say it? He said, I had a child in school for 18 years and then our son started college. So, but it has been a family affair. And one of the things that we did as a family early on was to establish our family mission statement. And I know that sounds just a little corny, but you've got to realize that he was a hospital administrator. He got out of the Army. In the Army, I learned to bloom where you're planted. That was one of our Wives Club's themes, and that's what I have done a lot of. But as he got out of the Army, we said that we need to think about how we're going to manage this two-career family. Because obviously you want to be successful and I want to be successful, so what are we going to do? So we made a mission statement. And we talked about what was important to us as a family. And part of what was important was that we both were able to pursue our careers. But that we were going to make decisions with what was important for the family as primary. And we've done that over the years. When we came here, Paul was accepted a job in Kingsport at what was then Holston Valley Community Hospital as an assistant administrator. We both had newly minted master's degrees, and we were ready to take on the world. And he had a job. So I drove over to Johnson City and walked into the chair of nursing's office, and I said, do you need any faculty? And she said, can you teach, I think she asked me at that time, could I teach maternity? Well, I had a brand new master's degree in maternal infant nursing, and I said, certainly I can teach maternity. So I started out at ETSU as a temporary faculty member because Nancy Alley, and some of you may know Nancy, was on maternity leave. Nancy has now retired. So she was on maternity leave and got me a job, and now she has retired from the university. And then the next year, there was another faculty who was on leave, and so I taught pediatrics. And then the next year, at the age of 30, I was chair of the department. And I tell that a little bit as I was the fat little rabbit. If some of you have read The Tawny Scrawny Lion to your children, the fat little rabbit is the one that they decide to send to the lion because he's eating all the other animals, and they think the fat little rabbit would probably either get eaten, but the fat little rabbit says, no, I'll do that job, and is so eager to do it. And I was always so eager to do the job, so I said, sure, I'll do that. Probably one of the hardest jobs I've had at ETSU, being chair of the department. It's really hard to be a leader among your peers. It's really hard to be the youngest person in the department and telling some of the older faculty members who've been there for years how they should be a faculty member. It was a growing experience for me, growing experience for me. But since that time, I've had opportunities, as I was telling someone earlier tonight, I've held every faculty role. I've gone through the ranks from assistant to associate to full professor and tenured. I didn't think tenure was important until I got it. And now it's really nice to know that I'm a tenured professor. I've held the academic administrative positions of chair, dean, assistant to the vice president, assistant vice president, associate vice president, and then vice president and COO and some of those things. It would make you think I didn't have a job, couldn't hold a job. But I've done this over 36 years, and this is part of that bloom where you're planted. Although we came to this area with our mission statement saying Paul was going to get the first job, and then we'd stay here 3 to 5 years, and we'd go somewhere and I'd earn a doctorate, and then we'd focus on my job, we found we really liked it here. We weren't particularly interested in moving. So I began to look for opportunities, 1, to grow professionally, and 2, to get my doctorate, which was so important for me to get. I gave a talk in Washington, D.C. at a nursing meeting for OBGYN nurses, and the person in front of me to speak was the head of Medicare Medicaid for the state of Maryland. And she was a doctoral student at the University of Southern California. So I had earned a master's in education at Southern Cal while I was in Germany as an Army wife at the Army Education Center. And I knew that they had educational programs all over the world. So this is a little embarrassing, but I went out and looked them up in the yellow pages. And they had a program in D.C. In fact, it was right across the street from the Ford's Theater. We used to tell the tourists that that was where Lincoln died. This was where he was shot. This is the house he died, and this was the building he studied public administration in. Many of them believed us. But I earned my doctoral degree while I was working full-time at ETSU because USC had a unique program. I went to D.C. about once every 4 to 6 weeks, stayed 4 full days, and we had the work to do in between in preparation to go. It was early adult education to really focus on the mid-career professional. My dissertation advisor was from the LA campus. I did my research with professors in Brunel University in England. I got to go to England and study. It was a wonderful opportunity for me to gain experiences in working in organizations and understanding how organizations work. So I wasn't able to do the traditional doctoral program, but I was able to find a program that worked for me. And I use my education every day in what I do. As the CEO of our academic health center, I'm one of about 120 people in the country who have that role. I'm one of only 2 who is a nurse. Now, for the nurses in the room, what that means is the dean of medicine reports to me. And if you realize, when I started working in nursing, we stood up when a doctor walked into the room. So if you think about that transition of life, we did. We had to stand up. No matter what we were doing, we stood up when the doctor walked into the nurses' station. So to be one of 2 nurses in the country that the dean of medicine reports to, it's pretty neat for me. And when I tell nursing colleagues that, they get real excited. What's more important, though, is that I work with a team of great people. I work with people who are highly creative, people who are innovative, people who take responsibility for what they do, people who like what they do, people who like to work together as a team. And I think that you have to be confident to work with highly creative people. You need to gather people around you who have talents and skills to accomplish the mission of your organization. One of the things we've done, somewhat like the UNC soccer team, is we've created our own mission statement within the Academic Health Science Center at ETSU. It's consistent with the university mission, but it's special for us. Now, it's not quite as compelling, but I'm going to read it to you anyway. Our mission statement, if you think about each letter, the first letter in each word will spell out ETSU AHSC, Academic Health Science Center. Okay, this is a quiz to see if you can keep all that in your mind. So our mission statement is excellence in teaching and scholarship united, ETSU, to advance health and serve communities, AHSC, Academic Health Science Center. And we thought, well, that's nice, but it really doesn't have a kind of a driving oomph to it. So we've added a little mission into action to go with that. So we believe that means engaging in world-class interprofessional education, conducting community-relevant and scientifically based research, understanding the spectrum of human cultures which impact health, providing leadership in health policy and healthcare delivery, and improving the health status of rural and underserved communities. It's better than being a veterinarian. It's really fun to have this as a mission and what we do. And we meet in my office, and this is another one of then and now stories. When I started at ETSU, my first office was in a speech pathology treatment room. It was about the size of this podium. I literally went to Belk's and bought a folding table and folding chairs and put it in the office. And when a student came in to meet with me, I closed the door and got the folding chair out so the student could sit down and we could meet. I've inherited a wonderful office now that has a large conference table in it, and it's a little bit of a safe haven for us within the health sciences to sit around our table and talk about how we want to achieve our mission. And like Shirley Chatter at Texas Women's University, I love my job. I love planning how we can help students prepare to be the health professionals of tomorrow. I love the creativity that can come from a team working together. I love knowing that as we do interprofessional education, we're on the cutting edge of education for health professions for the future. We know that collaborative healthcare delivery is better care for patients, it reduces cost, and it produces better outcomes. And we're teaching students right here at ETSU how to be collaborative caregivers and to be part of a team. And I think the deans in our health sciences area model that interprofessional behavior. Okay, how are we doing on time? It's about, I told you I could talk all night. All right, we're gonna wrap this up. One other part of my role, though, is not only am I team leader, I'm part of a team. And this is real important for Donna Nolan to hear. That what I do has to also support what the president does. I need to sit on his cabinet and be someone who is loyal, who's committed, who's consistent, who's compassionate, and who's confident. I have to be part of the solution. I can't just say, well, I'm going to go and play with these folks over in health. It's important for me to help Dr. Nolan be successful. So no matter what your role is, at one time you're going to assume another role at some other time if you're in an organization. And it's important to distinguish those roles. Sometimes you can't, and well, boy, when I'm sitting around the table with my deans, I don't always get my way either. But you have to know that just like the UNC soccer players said, that if you don't play as much as you want, you're going to support your other team members. You're going to be noble. And that's what you have to do. That's what teamwork is. It's give and take. I've learned, too, as I've gotten older, that a calm approach is helpful. I've always talked about consistency and caring and compassion. I like to talk about the C's. But calmness is important. It really does help to age and to go through some experiences and know that there are ups and downs. And sometimes you just have to work through them. And there's going to be sunshine and rainbows on the other side. My husband has called that keeping your canoe in the middle of the stream. But that does work. The arrows might come at you, but if you can be calm and keep your canoe in the middle of the stream, then you can be a good team member. And you can also show that you're confident that you've got your eye on the mission and you're going to achieve it. So, if I haven't rambled too much, let me bring us back around to the advice part, and then I hope you'll ask me some questions. I believe that there are lots of ways to be successful. I think those of you in the room are successful women. You wouldn't be here tonight if you weren't. I think you've set goals. I think you are confident. I believe that you do something every day to be stronger and better in what you do. And I hope that you know that it's okay to take risks. It's okay to change your mind. It's okay sometimes to go on a career path that you never thought you would take, but to take advantage of opportunities as they come along. Get your resumes in order. Get the skills, get the knowledge, get the experiences that you need. Work hard. Don't whine. Be willing to take risks. Be willing to say yes. Develop communication skills that work with teams, because teamwork is where it is. Understand the mission of your team and work hard to achieve that mission. I think the world of opportunity awaits. It's never too late. You've not waited too long if there's something you still want to do that you haven't done. And the 20-year-olds in the room, the world is yours. It's out there for you to take. So Godspeed to each of you. I hope you pursue your own personal and professional goals. Take those risks. And I hope you live lives that are never-ending ascensions. Thank you. Do you have time for questions?
Sure. Wilsie,
Yes.
you touched on it just a little bit, but going back to the time before 1969, you know, and the opportunities and the professions that were really approachable, and the opportunity to really go to a state institution as a woman during that time. If you would just, you and I have talked a lot about this, and we've been involved in it, but just, I think sometimes people don't really understand what was and what is.
Okay.
So would you mind just...
I'd be delighted to. In fact, I cut that out of the speech, so I'm really glad to put it back in. It wasn't until 1964, when the Civil Rights Act was passed, that women had the same opportunities for employment that men did. And it was Howard Smith, who was a representative from Roanoke, Virginia, who put that as an amendment to the Civil Rights Act. And a lot of women don't know that. They do not realize that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 began to open opportunities for us. And it wasn't until 1972, with the Title IX, that women had equal rights to education. We tend to think of Title IX as being equal rights to athletics, but no, it was equal rights to education. Prior to that, women didn't get the same financial aid packages. They weren't admitted to many schools. And they also, many places had pretty bad dormitories and places, residence halls for women to stay in. Women were not encouraged. In Virginia, when I was looking at colleges, I could have gone to a teacher's college. I could have gone to William and Mary, but they had a quota on the number of women. I could not go to UVA. I could not go to Virginia Tech because they admitted men. So we don't realize sometimes when I talk about women today can go to any college they want to. They can major in anything they want to. And the numbers that Jan shared are just an example of how the numbers are changing in the professions too. We admit about 50% women to our medical school class. And that's pretty phenomenal. When I first started out in nursing, to see a female physician, she was really a firebrand to do that. So things have changed. And I don't regret my path at all. I mean, my nursing background has given me wonderful skills. I've learned to problem solve. I've learned to triage. I can figure out when something really the bleeding needs to be stopped, and when I can go do something else and come back and take care of it later. I heard a college president one time describe it as knowing that he's got lots of balls in the air and he's got to figure out which ones to catch. And I think nursing has helped me with that, to figure out which balls to catch at what time. So when you think about 20-year-olds and the opportunities that are available for them, they're there. And women have the power to make a difference in our economy. And I hope all the 20-year-olds in the room will fulfill the dreams that you have for being successful.